ain't laughing.
It's a purple daily. No, Rick Spielman.
No, he's not laughing right now.
You like that? You like that?
No, we do not. We do not like this. So Phil Mackey, Judd Zolgad, Declan Goff here producing Purple Daily, and the big news that came out just a little while ago, Vikings, I would say premier free agent acquisition based on his performance, at least in 2017-18 with the Ravens. Michael Pierce has opted out of the 2020 season, and he cites his asthma for being the reason, which is very much any sort of respiratory issues.
Yes.
We're finding out it's not worth messing around when it comes to COVID-19. There's a lot of things we don't know about COVID-19. We do know that if you are at risk from a respiratory standpoint, you do not want to roll the dice. And so Michael Pierce, even though he is a relatively healthy 27-year-old physical specimen who's been one of the top interior defensive linemen in the NFL at times over the past 3 years, he has opted out of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Judd Zolgad, with Eric Sugarman, the Vikings head athletic trainer and overseer of COVID prevention, with him testing positive for COVID and Justin Jefferson being on the COVID list, full practices haven't even started yet. And this thing feels very shaky just from a Vikings perspective. So
absolutely,
how does this land for you?
Well, it lands a smart on Pierce's part, and it sounds like there are quite a few players around the league, including, 6 Patriots so far today as we record this on Tuesday that have decided that they're not going to play. And I believe the ruling is you have to opt out by August 1st, but if you opt out, you can't opt in. You're done. But as far as football players go, I don't blame them one bit. And to be clear, I don't think it's the threat that these guys think they're going to die. I think the threat is if they have underlying health concerns, and, a guy like Pierce is a huge man. I think the concern is if I get it, I might be done playing. Like if this impacts my lungs, I can't continue to play. And so I think the gamble here that they aren't willing to take, and I think they're right not to take it, the gamble that they don't want to take is not they're going to die. It's if I get sick, am I done playing? But yeah, I mean, this is the one guy that the Vikings signed, in March to a 3-year, $27 million free agent contract, who was going to anchor the middle of the defensive line, who was going to take the place of Joseph, who got signed by the Chargers after he was released here, I believe he might have been released in early March as well. This sits as a smart move, but this also speaks to my biggest question, which is the National Football League with no bubble really going to play? And I can't unequivocally sit here today and pound this table, Phil, and say yes. I honestly, when it comes to this sport, I honestly am not sure.
Listen, we've gone this far down the road. The ship has sailed in terms of doing the right thing to get rid of COVID as a country, and then we can have sports as a reward at the end of the rainbow. Like that's how other countries operated, and other countries, and maybe you could say, well, based on what we know about COVID, maybe other countries did overreact early on, and the United States, even though there were some lockdowns, maybe the United States did. Well, that debate aside, other countries said, we're putting this fire out, and then sports can come back. And the fire is still raging here in the United States, and we are trying to bring sports back, and it just becomes a math problem. If you're operating outside of a bubble environment, and you have 53 guys on an active roster, 80 guys on your training camp roster, 15, 20 coaches, there's like 200 people that could be considered part of a football operation, whether it's assistant coaches or ball boys or anyone that would be part of the training staff. And all of those people go home to their families and whoever those people have been in contact with. And so it would just seem very, very, very difficult for the NFL to go forward with a 16-game season. And let's just say that the season is on and the season's on the tracks and this thing's going to go forward. Mm-hmm. Just from a Vikings perspective, to already be looking to piece together a secondary and to figure out, all right, who is our other pass rusher, our other edge rusher opposite Danielle Hunter, and now all of a sudden Michael Pierce, who the Vikings expected to bounce back and maybe perform at the level he did a couple years ago with Baltimore. Like from a pure football perspective, this is a tough pill to swallow for the Vikings.
Sure.
And that doesn't even count all the different logistical nightmares that have to do with COVID once practice actually starts here later this week.
But if I'm the team and I signed him to this contract, here's what's weird about it. I'm not unhappy because, again, to my point, if he gets this, his career's in jeopardy. Like, he might not play. Not saying he's going to get deathly ill and die, but, if a guy like Pierce gets this, you could be in trouble. And his career, if his lungs are impacted permanently, he has to retire, right? So what's weird that I'm about to say from a Vikings perspective is I'm not completely upset because everything that we do in every sport 2020, any game that's played to me is gravy, but it's not real, right? So if I get this guy back and, hopefully there's a vaccine next year, right? And he shows up for training camp, and I know I'm playing the 16-game season. I know that things are back on track. That's my biggest goal. So I'm almost starting to look at this year that we think is going to be played from a team's perspective as learn what you can learn about your players. But am I really going to say it's normal? It's just not normal. I mean, there's no way to torture this.
So are you saying that you're the Vikings, you do not care about 2020 anymore? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that I would prefer that Michael Pierce, if he's concerned, preserves his health. And I'm not saying I don't care about it. I am not as worried about it as I ordinarily would be, because in sports this year, nothing's normal.
But if that's the path we're going down here too, because I'm not judging Michael Pierce. Even if Michael Pierce didn't have asthma, if he just said, and there will be players who say this. In fact, Hightower just opted out for the Patriots today. Yep. He doesn't have any respiratory issues, right? So
that I don't know.
Like, there's going to be players that just flat out say, I don't feel comfortable doing this. David Price was an example in Major League Baseball. Ian Desmond in Major League Baseball just said, I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable doing this. I'm not going to blame those people. But if that's an overwhelming sentiment among players that they just, whether they have asthma or not, like, players just don't really feel comfortable doing this because COVID is still raging around the country, well, then why are we even, like, what's the, if teams are going to say, well, whatever, like, if you want to play, if not, don't worry about it. If we have to sort of figure it out with practice squad guys, we will. Like, then what are we doing? What are we,
we're trying to get enough games to get our TV cash. That's what we're doing.
I get that, I guess.
That's what we're. But if you're a team, and a guy comes to you and says, "Oh boy, I don't know." And look, football to me, outside of a bubble, is the poster child for I ain't playing. Like, there is no part of football that is sanitary or safe normally, right? Yeah. And so baseball, I can justify, okay, yeah, it's going to spread, and it's a problem among teams. But if I play a team, odds are pretty good. I'm not going to get it from a guy who got a double, and I'm the shortstop. All right, I can go down that path, and I think I'm probably right. But think about Sundays, man. Think about football games. Like, if the Vikings play the Bears, and the Bears come back on Tuesday and are like, oh boy, 19 guys tested positive, the Vikings are screwed. Like, there's no way in my mind I can be like, well, I sort of tackled that guy with my head turned, and so when spit flew from his nose and mouth, it didn't really hit me, right?
Yeah.
So football's the one sport where, this is my whole point, I don't know that we can play it. I think they're going to try hard. I think college is done. But I think the National Football League is going to try hard to play because financially there is so much at stake here, Phil. But think about it. Think about the logistics of the game. Think about you can't be like, you know what? Let's just play touch.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems problematic that on the basically the day that players are supposed to be reporting here. I mean, like, the big talker today is, and we're 10 minutes into this, Michael Pierce opting out episode. Dalvin Cook has reported to Vikings training camp, so that's great. But it almost doesn't mean anything until we figure out what's happening with COVID, because if players can't stay safe and if players don't want to play, and we'll find out more about which Vikings are in, which Vikings are out, because today is reporting day for veterans.
What would get you as a fan to draw a line and say, I'm just not going to watch because? Like, if players opting out, is there a point where your enjoyment of football would be so ruined?
Quarterbacks. Okay. I mean, if Russell Wilson and Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes all said, this ain't worth it, I'm not going to do this.
Russell Wilson's really, really smart. He might.
Yeah, and if the NFL then came back and said, well, that's your choice. Matt Moore step on up.
Which they would, by the way.
Then the difference between the NFL and any of these minor leagues like the XFL, I mean, the XFL, the downfall of the XFL is there's only like 25 guys in the world that can play quarterback, and those guys are all in the NFL. Well, if some of those 25 guys aren't in the NFL anymore, then I'm having a harder time justifying wasting 3 hours watching a game on Sunday. I just pulled this up here just for fun from a Vikings perspective, because this might actually also be part of the line that you're talking about. You know, what would get you to stop watching football? You know, what would that line be? And I'm starting to look at the Vikings defensive depth chart once you start taking away some of these players. Like right now, so ESPN.com was really quick to update the Vikings depth chart. Within 10 minutes of Michael Pierce opting out, he's no longer, he's now fourth on the defensive tackle depth chart. Yep. And the Vikings defensive tackle depth chart is now Jaleel Johnson and Shamar Stephen. And
Shamar Stephen did not have a great season last year.
Then you've got Armin Watts was a 6th-round pick last year, who actually he played 120 snaps for the Vikings. And according to Pro Football Focus, his season grade was just a shade under 70, which is not that bad.
Okay.
So I actually think if Armin Watts was given a chance here, and like I said, he was a 6th-round pick. He was the 190th pick last year. I'm not saying he's going to step in to be a superstar, but he showed enough potential last year, and he was highly regarded for that much inexperience. Pro Football Focus, like that guy could step in and maybe do a decent job.
Mm-hmm.
But just from a football standpoint, the Vikings' expectation was that Michael Pierce, who had kind of a down year last year, that he would go back to being the guy or close to it that Baltimore saw in 2017-18 that was, again, according to Pro Football Focus, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL. Like better than Linval Joseph good at that position in certain respects. And you have to try to replace that guy in 2020 now going forward.
Going to have to get creative, right?
So we sit here and we've talked about, well, what are they going to do if Gladney can't step in right away at cornerback? You know, what are they going to do if they don't bring Everson Griffin back? And now it's like you literally have one reliable defensive lineman at this point going into the season, just from a pure football standpoint.
Okay, for specific packages that the Vikings might use on defense, would you, right now, knowing what we just found out about Pierce, would you be more likely to pick up the phone and try and bring Griffin back and use him, to use your term, as a Swiss Army knife? Because for packages, we saw this on passing downs, he can go inside and get creative.
I think if there's only 2 guys you have to worry about blocking along the defensive line, it doesn't matter as much. Like, to me, Everson Griffin as a Swiss Army knife, when you have Linval and Danielle Hunter to worry about, is a problem.
Sure.
When you only have Danielle Hunter to worry about, I just don't like. Are you just shuffling deck? Like Everson Griffin?
I'm just trying to get more creative.
I think. Yeah, I know.
Don't know it'll work. It would work.
I think part of the reason why Everson Griffin has had a late career resurgence too is because of playing opposite of Danielle Hunter and playing close to Linval Joseph. Like they're not going to double team you, so
yeah.
You know, early in Everson's career, he was putting up numbers, and oftentimes, he'd get chipped.
I'm just trying to help Zim out here, okay? I'm trying to help Capers. I'm trying to help Zim out. I'm trying to
wear a damn
ideas.
mask. That's how you help Zim.
Around.
Wear a damn mask is how you help Mike Zimmer right now. So I don't know. I feel like COVID is already derailing the Vikings season before the season has entered the practice phase.
But this was the most predictable thing, right? Of all the sports that you would expect to be thrown curveballs quickly, football has to be one.
Yeah, I just don't know.
I mean, baseball's in trouble, but baseball, to me, the sport of football and the amount of people, some in shape, some not in great shape, right? Just the things going against completing an entire football season, to me, seem to be mammoth.
Yeah, it seems it's the hardest sport, I would think, to keep guys away from each other.
Yes.
In terms of social distancing, because guys are literally just like in huddles and blocking each other and grabbing each other and tackling each other, and you're doing it outside of a bubble. And
your head athletic trainer has it, Phil. Yeah. Your Fauci has it.
Yeah, the only 2 solutions I see here for an NFL season are we as a country drastically reduce the brush fire in the next couple months, which I don't know, that doesn't seem entirely likely. Or we find some way to just listen, if these are asymptomatic cases, we as a league, the NFL, just don't care.
That's what I've always thought. That's what I've always thought.
Is there another solution?
Care.
Is there another solution?
There isn't.
Well, and
I don't think so.
Could I see them going through door 2 that you just painted? Absolutely. Would that be worth some big time lawsuits? God forbid something goes wrong. Probably. I will say if I had faith that this country had an idea right now and could control it, like let's just say masks are worn by everybody. I mean everybody, north, south, east, west. Okay, and I said, okay, the springtime we didn't do as well as we should have, but now we're going to. I think the solution would be to send everybody home, football-wise right now, and bring them back in October. And then just shorten
January.
your season. No, but I just don't have faith.
Honestly, a pause season might be the most logical route. I mean, you can do it.
Yeah, you can, but do you have faith? My problem is I don't have faith that we're going to get to October, November, and have it be like, oh yeah, it's really improved. We've shown nothing so far that indicates the willingness to do what needs to be done to calm this thing.
This is total side street curveball, but the other thing that's going to happen this fall, regardless of who wins the presidential election, if you thought that there was social unrest in May and June, like regardless of who wins the election, the other side, like there will be all kinds of unrest in November that might even derail games if COVID is not here. So I just say, buckle up. Michael Pierce has decided to kick back, not risk it. And there are plenty of tentacles off of that from a football perspective that we did dive into and we'll continue to dive into. But I don't know, man. It just doesn't have a good feeling about entering the 2020 football season.
If I'm the Vikings, the one thing I'm doing is I'm saying, Michael, good for you. We feel that you are making the exact right call. And here is Pat, Josh, Phil. He's your personal trainer. And he's going to be with you until training camp of next year. Because the one thing that scares me about guys going home is they go home.
They chill out for 5 months and gain 50 pounds.
Pierce is a huge man who has gained weight before and struggled to control it. So that's the one thing. If I've got that 3-year, $27 million investment, I'm going to make damn sure that investment returns to me as fit as possible. How about that?
I have one more thought too so New England has had, like you mentioned earlier, Judd, has had 6 players opt out of the season here basically today, including 2 defensive starters. And Adam Schefter has been sending out some stuff on Twitter, like talking to other executives in the league that they think Belichick's up to something. Is maybe the Patriots are tanking this season to get Trevor Lawrence as the next franchise quarterback, and maybe they're doing what the Spurs did in the late 90s when, all right, let's have one down year, get the number 1 pick, get Tim Duncan, and go forward.
Yep.
Has anyone mentioned the other side of this? Is maybe players just don't like Bill Belichick anymore? It's been like 20 years, and he's kind of an ass. And Tom Brady's gone now, and they're just like, I ain't going to put up with this. Tom Brady's gone. COVID is raging, and Bill Belichick's an ass. I'm good, and I'm a millionaire.
It's the
I'm
hat
just
trick.
going to chill.
It's the perfect hat trick. Hat trick of why I'm not going to play for the Patriots this year. Hey, you might be right.
So,
I like it.
All right, well, that's a wrap on this emergency episode of Purple Daily here. We appreciate you joining us.
Go Armin Watts.
Armin Watts, everybody. I guess
Go Jalil.
He's your new starter in place of Michael Pierce. So, thanks to everyone for hanging out with us, and we would appreciate a subscription on our YouTube channel to youtube.com/ScoreNorth. We'll see you later.